more love. So now it's 2013, or really it's the fall of 2011, and I had been thinking about doing a show on love probably since 2006 or 7 or 8. Coming up with the idea that I thought, what could I talk about that hadn't been really talked about in the art world, but really deserved having attention. And finally, a museum in North Carolina wanted to do this show. And again, I think part of it was, again, they want people to come to their museum, and love seems like a good way to do it. So for me, I would say something driving my choice about what to do is I want to make something that's populist. I want people to come, but I also want it to be really smart and intellectual. And when I think about this show, I think it's both. It's risky in a way because it's not what you really think love is going to be when you come to the museum, but it's also risky for intellectuals because that wasn't considered a very serious topic. This is a beautiful piece by Jim Hodges. And, the artists I've included, some of these were really major names in the art world. Felix Gonzalez-Torres, Janina Antoni, the Albright Knox owns this piece. Dario Riboletto, some people thought his work was too sentimental. Obviously, this is the name. Tracy Emmons was considered a very bad girl of the art world. And Louise Bourgeois, one of the grand dames of art, and I don't think her and Felix Gonzalez-Torres had ever been in an exhibition together. So I had kind of 3 rules I made for myself. One was that it was going to be about kind of participation or about conversation, that it wasn't always about love as a romantic idea, but this French feminist theorist, Luce Irigaray, said, in the Western tradition, we have this love of knowledge, but that's kind of a problem. We should really have that we should really think about the wisdom of love more, this kind of reciprocal back and forth instead of hierarchical talking down. And that was something I was kind of instinctively always interested in. So somebody like Felix Gonzalez-Torres, it's all about taking a piece of candy and watching the pile go down and having your own thoughts about that work. This is a piece where you actually sit down with a forensic sketch artist and she'll draw your first love. That can be kind of traumatic, actually. This is Julianne Schwartz. This picture isn't the entrance to the museum, but it's a piece where sound comes out of the museum, and all these people tell you that they love you as you walk into the museum, which is a little bit unsettling at a museum, and but also kind of amazing. And this is Yoko Ono. You could take a picture, and that was what you were supposed to do, and put it on the wall, and she actually gave you this crystal back. And it was kind of beautiful to see everybody up on the wall. The whole community ended up getting to have a portrait. Politics was the other kind of role, art that dealt with politics. So, this is a Palestinian artist, a Lebanese artist. Antonio Vega Macatella. What's amazing with this work is the whole piece, Time Diversa. He was with a Mexican he went to a Mexican prison, and he was able to get into that prison and basically be a surrogate for people outside and do things they couldn't do, like go to the crypt where somebody's mother was, and then the person in prison would have to do kind of a drawing for him in exchange. But he did 365 of these. These is epic things. And this is another artist, Katerina Seda. She, in this piece, worked for a year to get a whole town to do the same thing for a day. And they thought she was crazy. It's why do you want me to do that? And for her, it was a way they could all get to know each other better, and a way to talk about how community had been broken down because of now that the wall had gone down in the Eastern European countries, they had kind of lost their sense of community. and technology. You know, our world is really affected by love. So these were different people I included. If you're a young person and you don't know this piece, Learning to Love You More, you should research it. It was basically assignments. It was actually one of the first kind of web art pieces, and it was eventually bought by the SF MoMA, and so it's kind of interesting, that whole process, to show it. We actually made an installation, and then this is an artist I met when he was a student at UB, and I commissioned a new piece for him to do about love and how work and love are complicated. So No Time for Love, Worldwide Regret Counter for Misplaced Priorities, and I think it's still up and you could add something to it. More and more as time has gone on, I think one of my real values is, so I'm doing a really big show. I even get to show these major works by Felix Gonzalez Torres, and this piece was a loan from the Museum of Modern Art, and it was quite a feat. You have to actually, when you borrow this work, you have to show it 6 times. You don't just get to have to pay for 1 billboard for 2 months. You've got to figure out how to pay for 6 billboards in different places. Why shouldn't I at least go do studio visits in that town where I am and consider including artists who might live there who doing valuable work that would be part of this conversation? And I actually got 2. Two ended up being from Greensboro, which was about an hour away from Chapel Hill. And this was one of Lee Walton. So this great performance piece, actually every day for the 40 days the museum was actually open, the show was open, there would be this performance piece. You wouldn't really know if it was happening or not happening, but kind of honoring that relationship. And this was a very young artist I met at the Banff Center. I went on a residency there called What's Love Got to Do With It? And I love that this dealt with technology and making something handmade. These were all the emoticons she got from her boyfriend. And I should say, so yes, this show had 55 artworks, and it was 33 artists. Oh, so I want to talk about this. So I also commissioned 5 new pieces as a part of the show, and one of them with Gregory Sale. And I met Gregory in Arizona. He had been thinking about love too. He made this piece, Love Buttons, in 2007 or 8. I think 2007, and he basically got a number of different poets to talk about write poems or texts about love, and then put them on these buttons and gave them out at a festival. I should say in Scottsdale, this love sculpture by Robert Indiana is part of the landscape near the museum. And they also have a very active public art program, which was what funded this project. And he gave them out at music festivals. And he said he just wanted to kind of change the kind of acrimonious energy of the day back then, when people were worried about, war and division in society. But then in 2010, Gregory started dealing with the prison industry in Arizona, and Joe Arpaio is a really notorious sheriff who did really horrific things, made the prisoners live in tents in 110-degree weather, wear these uniforms, wear pink underwear. So Gregory created a whole series of social practice projects at the museum to consider this idea. And so I included Gregory after I left Arizona in a number of shows, really when he was still pretty unknown. And he's recently gotten a Creative Capital grant. So I'm finally doing my love show, and I invite Gregory, and I feel like he's kind of combined these 2 projects. I always felt that prison work was so strong and he was so successful at it is because he was a good listener. He could kind of get all different people to be on his side, the prison guards, the prisoners themselves, even the kind of upper management that you have to get to. Get Joe Arpaio, even though he was the sheriff, he was media savvy, but he still had to somehow make that an okay thing to do. In Chapel Hill, he felt, well, okay, I'm going to do Love Buttons 2.0. He ended up calling it Love for Love, and he said, you know, this is a community that there is a lot of social justice in Chapel Hill. There's a lot of giving back. There was free dinners for people. They had English as a second language classes. They had support for homeless teenagers. So Gregory decided, I want those people to be the one writing the text now and being the ones who are kind of giving, and the people who are usually on the giving end could be on the receiving end. And so he made more buttons, the red ones, and gave them out. And I think we maybe gave 10,000 out during the exhibition, and they were all over town. And I know he's gone on, I think this piece has been, More Love traveled, so it was in Nashville. There's more buttons there, and it's even traveled this piece to a few other places. I think he's made 40 or 50,000 buttons. Here's most of them, I think. And now, not surprisingly, here we are. This is my favorite one, Fresh Caught Tomatoes, Ohio River. Of course, to me, love is tomatoes. That someone else wrote this, and it was, what's even kind of a little bit eerie to me is I got to go along. I mean, I live in Buffalo. I'm working on a show in North Carolina. Gregory lives in Arizona. He came 7 times to make this project happen. We're both there kind of for the opening. And I go with him one day to prison to meet the people who wrote these. And I actually met the man who wrote that button. So I also got to do a big catalog. And I'm always asking artists to write whenever I can. I love their voices as scholars and intellectuals and really thoughtful people. So there's 2 essays by 2 different artists and different interviews, and even, let's see, this one I want to highlight. Jonathan Katz, here he is, up here, who is a professor at UB, in charge of the whole PhD program, a really important scholar on gender, and he really talks about love in the 60s, so it's really great comparison. And I also I asked artists to give me their kind of fan mail, like did they ever get like a love letter from someone who liked their work, and I got a few different ones, and they're really pretty fun. And you can buy it on Amazon. It's in the Buffalo Public Library. I have a couple copies here tonight. So the only bad thing about More Love was that it was in North Carolina, for me. Anyway, because I didn't get to live the show. I didn't get to give a lot of tours. I didn't get to talk to people about the show. I didn't get to get people's feedback. I only got to do that like the couple of weekends I was there. And I really like that. I really want to hear what people have to say. So I decided I had kind of decided at that point I was going to stay in Buffalo. I think I had flirted with leaving for a while, but so many exciting things were happening here. I was going to stay. And so I started something called CS1 Projects. And I started in 2013, actually. That date is wrong. But so all of these different artists have we've collaborated. We've made something different, something new, and I'll just go through some of these projects. So I love food. I really think it's this amazing creative medium. I was noticing at the time there were some important shows about food happening. One called Feast, Radical Hospitality and Contemporary Art. I went to that. I went to the opening. I was following that exhibition closely. This was at the University of Chicago museum called the Smart Museum. And it was talking about how artists had used food, probably since the 60s. But what I noticed was really more about the hospitality and less than kind of about the food. And so I thought, well, let's do something really about the food. I would say I'm a serious foodie. So what do I need? I thought, well, let's do a collaboration with a chef and an artist. And so first I had to find a chef, right? So amazingly, this woman, Colleen Stillwell, happened to be my tenant. And I didn't even really know her very well. She just would leave occasionally these croissants at our doorstep. And I was like, oh my God, this is the best thing I've ever had. And back in 2013, or even 12, this was not something you could find in Buffalo. So I said, would she be game to do something? And, she didn't have a restaurant or anything at the time. She just taught at Niagara University. And I honestly didn't know that much more about her, except that her food tasted really good. And then Lynn McCabe was an artist I had worked with in More Love. And she had done projects that dealt with connection. But this was a piece, was kind of a feminist commentary on minimalist musical works. And a lot of these minimalist music pieces, they last for a really long time, 12 hours. You've got to sit there and listen to someone make this monotone music for time. And her thought was just only something men can do who don't have kids. So she thought, well, I'm going to invite these women over to my house to play that music while I make them some food. And so she made a video piece about it. So I decided, let's pair them together. And Lynn's idea was to think about Buffalo's history. So it was called Eat Your Hearts Out, a Central Migration Through Buffalo's Past, Present, and Future. She was of Irish ancestry, so there's that. We talked about the present and the future. Anyway, Colleen is not just a talented pastry chef, but chocolatier. Lynn wanted to go from dark to light. And so it ended up being a series. And I also had to figure out, I should go back, I guess. How am I going to pay for this, right? Like, I got to fund it. I don't work in a museum anymore. I don't have a development staff. And I thought, well, why don't we, the Echo Art Fair was happening. I said, why don't we sell like an addition to artwork, like prints? But instead of prints, you could buy food. And so I went on the CSA model. And the CSA model is community-supported agriculture. You can sign up for subscription of vegetables for the year. And actually, people start to do this with art, too. You could sign up for a box of art. And that was happening in Minneapolis and Nashville, and it's happened in Buffalo since then. So you could sign up for a series of 3 dinners for 2 people if you bought this. And 2 of the dinners came in this box, and you took them home. And so we made really this gorgeous Irish simple food in this really kind of gorgeous way. And Lynn was really drawn to the whole Irish history here. She did have Irish ancestry. She grew up in Scotland and then had moved to Houston. So the kind of toil of a working class person who built this city and broke their back and struggled, she really connected with that. Then we played on the kind of history of industrial food production here, which is very, very long and rich. It's kind of amazing. They even had, like, when I was doing researching the candies, like they had important conventions of industrial sugar and candy here. So we made all this industrial food from scratch: Wonder Bread, Oreo cookies, Fig Newtons, shake and bake chicken. Part of this whole thing was you could put it together in different ways. And then the last dinner was a sit-down dinner in the Frank Lloyd Wright Boathouse about the immigrant traditions. And part of it also for Lynn was that you had to go to these different places to pick it up. So you would get to know different parts of the city you might not have been to. And in the fall of 2013, there was a new park by the grain elevators. The foundry was still very new. So it was a huge success. And I would say I think for Lynn, it's like, how can we know the world that's not just about language and even viewing things? How can we use all of our senses? How can we kind of have this sensual knowledge of the world? And I would say that's, one of the things I'm really interested in. And then Colleen made these, just kind of did everything amazingly, I should just say. We had little tastes between all the courses. So that was first project, big success. And I still wanted to do more food projects. So I was drawn, and I would say each of these projects for me has kind of like grown organically out of my own personal passions. So Dennis Maher, this is his Fargo house, a great artist in Buffalo. This is the library of that house. And it's just this amazing place. And to me, the best thing is being in that house. And so how exciting would it be to have some kind of food project there? And I would say for me, who's been lucky enough to go to Falling Water, to be in Taliesin West, to be in all these kind of famous architectural spaces, you can't really get to know them unless you kind of get to be in them, inhabit them, kind of have a drink, have a meal, do something else. It's really the best way to kind of know these places. So they got together, we had a lot of meetings, we thought what we would do, and Dennis was really like, let's eat the house. That was his idea. Let's eat the house. So that's what we did, and Colleen really invented all of these different meals. So the way it worked, right? Okay, I've got some more problem solving to do. I can't have a big table and we can't serve 30 people at once. That's not going to work. So the way it worked was people would come in groups of 2 to 3. They would sit in each room, and then every 15 minutes they moved to another room, and we had people come over a 2.5-hour period. So I think we had maybe 15 groups. And you can see here, this is that room, and basically you could eat the toys, which was all this amazing fruit. Pea soup. I love this picture here that we're kind of eating the house. There's that. And I think, obviously the food was good, but there's just this kind of sense of joy in being in this environment and having all of these sensual things happening at once and kind of seeing the space in a different way and almost kind of just being in this state of wonder or relaxation where you kind of notice things in another way. And the food was commenting on the room specifically, and then almost eating, you were really kind of knowing the house through eating it. So up in Dennis's bedroom, it's a little bit more austere, and so they made these pillow crackers, and I love that different people weren't sure where to eat. So there's some, where you kind of sat affected things. And then, excitingly, Colleen, decided not to move to New York to help another chef she knew start a restaurant, not take a job at the French Laundry, and ended up staying in Buffalo and started a business called Butter Block with the photographer from that event, Ginny Rose Stewart. And if you don't like this place on Instagram, you should, and get their food because it's amazing. So yeah, I didn't even realize how talented of a chef Colleen was when I first kind of proposed the idea to her. Okay, we're a little after 8, so if you have to go, I understand, but I got a couple more things. So I'm finally going to do a garden, right? It was going to happen eventually. This is a house I bought on Bidwell Parkway in 2007. This was a picture I took in probably 2013. It was better than when I got it. I had painted it. The garden still didn't look very good. I had talked to different artists, kind of in a very casual way. Would you want to do something? I don't know. I hadn't pursued it very seriously. Nobody didn't really stick. Nothing kind of happened. But now I had started this organization. I was going to do something. And I basically wanted to put the Getty Garden in my front yard, which is a little crazy, right? That's kind of optimistic. So I don't know if you've been here, if you ever go to LA, this would probably be my number one thing to see. This was Robert Irwin is an amazing artist of the light and space movement of the 60s, but he was asked to kind of speak back to this very macho architect, Robert Meyer, and built this garden. And I love this phrase, a sculpture in the form of a garden which aims to be art. So I had to find the people to do the project. And actually, thanks to Colleen Stillwell, I met Matthew Dorr of Buffalo Horticulture. And there's Matt. And I had also known this artist, Al Volo. And so Matt is this great landscape designer and also very artistically minded person. And Al was someone I met when he was in Beyond in Western New York 2007. People really know him more for this type of work, which is a little bit, I don't know, I don't want to say scatological, but humorous in a different way than you would think about gardens. And he's making art constantly, but he also is a farmer. He lives on a farm in Eden. And I knew this. I think I'd probably traded tomato plants with him before. So I got them together. Matt has already started working on a plan. He really had thought about the Getty Garden and kind of thought about the aspects. So, and what Al said he wanted to do was make the house bloom. And he talked about really taking all of the aspects of the house, like the shingles, what you don't see in this picture, or the light post, or different like forms that were in this, in the building and in the landscape, and use those as templates to pick the plants. And that's what he did. And I should say, I don't have the pictures here, but like pages and pages of different plants that we could use. Just so much thinking. And Matt talked about that. They weren't always the plants that he would normally use, because some of them you couldn't get in a normal nursery. So, you know, here is Cosmos. This is a pretty common plant, like this, or these Turk-capped lilies. We did grow some special annuals, not surprisingly, a bunny tail. And if anyone knows anything about Al, he likes bunnies, and he's into this like duck rabbit image. And I just wanted to show one picture. This is Linda Benglis. So he makes artwork where he'll look at all these famous artworks and he'll draw a painting of, you know, Linda Benglis shot of a video she made. She's an important feminist video maker from the 60s, when there's a bunny in the image. So he's always trying to like insert these things in there. So here we are sketching out the garden, thanks to Matt, who built it as well. So there's a really beautiful water feature in the Getty Garden, and I love how Matt really was able to like make that happen by diverting one of the downspouts and making this rain navel. We also, Al's idea was to have a sharing part of the garden. So around the garden navel, we would put plants in that we shared and traded with people in the neighborhood. And here we are the first time, and we did the bunny-tailed grass and this other thing called nigella. And someone's giving me a rose. You go, anyway. And then there's my rose. And I should say, if you love plants and you want to trade with me, I need more plants. So it's grown in nicely. So this is our territory of collaboration. Here's the Getty Garden. And I think, you know, the spirit of it's there. And I just wanted to kind of show what happened after. So at the same time I was putting that the garden in, as I decided I should repaint the house. It wasn't looking so great. We still want to make a topiary. So this is this symbol that Al is interested in and he got impatient because I couldn't find the plant for him soon enough, so he just started doing it in his own backyard. You can see that. And then Matt has really started, you know, kind of acting more as an artist as well as being a landscape designer. And I just grabbed one page from his website. You should go to Buffalo Horticulture and look at all the different things he's doing. One of these is foraging for leftover Christmas trees and adding them to the landscape when it's so, you know, brown. And actually the exciting thing he told me last week was that Colleen and him are going to start working on a foraging project where he forages food and she will can it or make spruce syrup or something. So that's kind of pretty poetic in my mind. Okay. So I'm not just making food and gardens. I'm also dealing with painting and drawing. And so this is an artist I had known for a while, Felice Koenig, and we had talked a lot because we were both interested in this idea of love. And obviously I was working on my love show. She was making her abstract paintings that take months to make. They're made up of almost 50 layers of paint, all with these tiny little dots. I think for me, I don't think most people realized how conceptually and emotionally rich they were. You know, that you were just so drawn to the materiality of them, you didn't step back and think about the conceptual aspects. So we just talked for a while, and we started talking about this. I think we even did it once where you can make a collaborative drawing together, and it's not just any kind of collaborative drawing. The idea is that you draw on the same piece of paper at the same time and you turn the piece of paper, so it's not like some person does and you hand it to the next person, so it's really collaborative. And even the more I realized and researched some of the science behind love is that Felice is actually doing also a lot of mirroring, which is one of the ways that you can really be in sync with someone you are having a conversation with or care about. So we made a project about it, and for me it was exciting because I actually got to be an artist for once. So I listed my name here as an artist. And so we made Felice made 80 drawings, and I think it was about with 70 people. Some people made 2. And, before these all got filled in, and, they were long sessions too. These were 90-minute sessions, so Felice was really kind of intense and doing all of this in 3.5 weeks. And I do want to read a quote. We obviously reached out to artists that we knew, but we also worked to get, dentists and librarians and people who weren't always making art all the time to also come. And I really worked to get people's responses. What was this like for them? Not just to have them do it and have them go away, but so I'll just read what this librarian wrote back, which was really lovely. Drawing with Felice was like having a play date, a cup of tea, lots of pretty pens and easy conversation made the 90 minutes just fly by. I was nervous as all get out initially, but with each turn of the page and Felice's encouragement, I grew more confident and comfortable putting pen to paper. It was really great fun. I think the experience dusted off a part of my brain because that evening I stopped at my piano, sat down, and played for the first time in ages. So I don't know, I couldn't have gotten a more affirming kind of feedback that we were kind of like spreading a sea of not just love but creativity. And this got me to think about love and drawing and what these interactions are like, and I wrote an essay, and you can go to the Drawing Center blog and read about it. And we actually had a lot of nice feedback on this exhibition, and people writing their, actually curators as well, writing what they thought of this project. So you can go to CS1 Projects.org and kind of connect to different parts of the press. And we even got one of the top 10 exhibitions for the year in Buffalo from the Buffalo News. So this is the last CS project that's happened that I'll tell you about. So I'm not just working with local artists, I'm also working with international artists. And someone asked me, did I want to do something for FinFest? And I was like, what? I don't know what FinFest is. And this happened last fall. And someone I knew in a non-art setting, someone I had met who was young, Christina Sheridan, who was this person working with this group. She had married a Finn and was real gung-ho. And I said, I don't know. Is there any money? So this is the Kleinham Music Hall. This is really the inspiration why this festival came. It was designed by 2 important Finnish architects, Elio and Eero Saarinen, who designed the JFK terminal in New York and the St. Louis Arch, the Sun did. And I thought, oh yeah, I do. We started talking about saunas and art saunas. And I was like, oh yeah, I remember this artist I met at PS1 Contemporary Arts Center in 2000. That's a long time ago. And she was part of Greater New York, and you could take a sauna. And guess what? I took the sauna, because that's what I do. I always like to participate. And I don't remember being naked in public, but this is the only image I could find on the web. So bodily knowledge, right? Central experience, my kind of thing. So Pia, of course, was not doing saunas anymore 15 years later. Most artists don't work on the same thing that long. But she was still thinking about, she had gone back, after years of not thinking about this, gone back to thinking about traditional Finnish culture in a contemporary art setting. And she wanted to do this ancient healing technique where she basically gave a massage to people called From the Kalevala treatment. And we were just going to do it in a gallery, and she was going to do drawings. Maybe the participants were going to do drawings before and after, or she was going to do drawings of her experience of giving that massage. But eventually it changed. She actually originally wanted to work with the Buffalo Philharmonic. That didn't actually happen. Eventually found another group to work with, Wind Cities. And I'll show you what actually happened, but I wanted to stop for a minute and say, okay, so that's a pretty crazy idea, right? We're an artist doing an ancient healing treatment as a performance piece, as a serious artwork. That's not everyday art. But I really had been noticing that artists were dealing with healing treatments and healing as artwork. And here are two great examples. I really think this Pedro Ray piece, the more I read about it, was in Documenta, at the Tate. It was everywhere. The Guggenheim, I saw it. I participated with it in Toronto. And so we basically, Wooden Cities, created a new musical piece that they scored off her giving that massage, and we did it on the Kleinhand stage as a kind of critique of this traditional epic Kalevala. Because the Kalevala is the epic oral stories of Finland, but they were edited by a man, and so they left out all the healing treatments. So this was her way to say, oh, there's all these other things we should start thinking about. And what's really exciting is that this has inspired Pia to work on an idea that I think she felt a little bit nervous about working on. It wasn't. Anyway, she is now going to be in the Sao Paulo Biennale this coming fall. So it's exciting to know that I helped make that happen. And she made this drawing for our program. And if any of you came or know anybody who came, I want to get some more responses from that. And actually, I will give someone a drawing from one of the. Anyway, I'd love to just choose one of the ones that's the best. And so I'm going to post that on Facebook, but you can spread the word. I'm doing things in the future too. Another garden project. I guess it's not surprising that I met Art Farms, which is a group that's working on the east side to do sculptures or artworks on working gardens or farms, something they actually need. And you can see this is a bit of a collage. This has not been made yet. It will probably happen in 2017. We've gotten a little teeny bit of seed money to do a few hands-on workshops at City Honors. But we're basically going to make an earth mound that has some planetarium aspects in it. So a way to consider the world before electricity and kind of know what that's about. So we will have a formal announcement soon-ish. But I will say it's a great group of people. David Laget is an architect from Bookland. Becky Moda is a teacher at City Honors. Cassandra Sewell is an artist who runs the garden. So it's a great group of people. Oh, okay. So, I also want to say I'm planning another project that's really exciting, and it's with young audiences of Western New York, Silo City, and Ujima Theater, and we're going to announce it soon, but I should just say everyone should be excited to hear what that's about. Okay, a house. Besides doing art projects, my husband, J.M. Reed, and I have been renovating houses. And this is a house we just renovated. Really rebuilt the whole house from the, anyway. But for me, it was really fun to install the house and stage it and bring out all the art in our collection. And it just reminded me how much I love doing that. And I would love to start consulting with people as they build collections, or if you know anyone who wants to do that. And it's a way to really support local artists. I should also say, for all the students in the room, I love interns. I would love to have interns, and you can read about this on my website. I know you guys have to go, and that's fine. That's okay. No worries. And you should all like me on Facebook, and also like my name on Facebook as well. So, yeah, thank you all for coming. So there's time for questions, obviously, if anyone wants to ask anything.
I have
Yes.
a question. I've had the opportunity to work with Claire a couple of times, so it all fits together so nicely in this presentation. And I'm just thinking back when we were selecting tomatoes for Urban Roots. Did you know it was all part of the same narrative, or is it something that comes with, living your life longer, being more reflective, thinking about what you want to do with your life? Because you came in to help us with tomatoes because I knew you loved tomatoes, but I never really thought of it in connection to your art career, but it totally makes sense seeing it in this perspective.
No, I didn't plan this. But of course, I think, just like John said, I wanted to go to the art openings. No one was telling me I had to go to the art openings back then. I wanted to be where I was. I wanted to know the people in my community. I was just kind of like a natural thing. It's kind of, I love knowing about, it's I guess I like all the crazy tomatoes. I love knowing about the artists outside there, things from other places, but I think I have always naturally been interested in place. When I think back, I wrote my thesis on Kiki Smith, and it was called Reclaiming the Object in 1997, when she was a pretty young artist. Really had not had any major shows yet, or big catalogs. And it was really kind of about this high-low thing, kind of equating the masculine and the feminine. So kind of appreciating everything that was in existence, craft, decorative arts. I don't know. I guess you could say, do artists really know 100% when they start out that they're just going to focus on this? I guess that's the last thing I'll say. I do think I have a really creative sensibility, and so I am somewhat intuitive, kind of just, kind of following an interest or a passion before I truly know how it's going to work out. And I guess maybe that's not something I emphasize, but that's really true. I had no idea how great that project, the food project, was going to be. Who knew it was going to be that exciting? It could have failed. Or I'm actually planning a mentorship webinar for other curators. And we talk about how are you creative? You're willing to fail. And I thought, well, what's a public thing I can say about when I failed in public? And I guess one really good example is the Pia project, which was, Pia said she wanted to do this treatment with the Buffalo Philharmonic. And I was like, yeah, that's not going to work. But I'll have the meeting with Dan Hart, who's the director of the Philharmonic, because he's a good guy, and he'll at least humor me. And then that led to suggesting another group, and that group said yes, and then they said no, and then they gave us another group. So you just don't know, and who knew how good it was going to be? So I do think I have a knack for trusting artists and having a sense, not only is their work good enough, are they good enough individuals that they can work hard enough to make it happen? And I would say I even had that feeling about Colleen early on. Like, she was just so hardworking, I thought. I don't even know anything about her, but her energy was just like, she's going to deliver. And she did, man. Because those were hard. I can't even explain it all. Like, that last dinner was in a snowstorm with not enough electricity. And, like, anyway. So, I don't know if I'm answering your question. We all sat here a long time, so thanks for coming. And if you have any questions, come talk to me afterwards.